Hello, it's Classy here back with another Tribes video, and today we will be finishing up our series where I go through all of the updated tier lists, and we will be doing the Alliance Team Battle tier list. And the timing for this video is great because it has just been announced today that there will be a new Alliance Team Battle event coming very soon to the game, so get ready with your alliances to build your new teams and do as much damage as possible for the rewards. Make sure to check out the disclaimers that are at the beginning of this video after the intro, just to make sure you fully understand the information I'm providing here. And let's jump right into it. So Alliance Team Battle is similar in a way to FG where you have limited turns. This time you'll have 7. And the interesting thing about this mode is that you can vote for targets with your alliance mates, which will allow you to gain more tribe gauge at the beginning of the battle. And you can also upgrade scientific ninja tools, which buff certain characters or tribes. So overall, Alliance Team Battle has a lot to cover, and I'll be doing a video on that as well. But for the meantime, let's just jump right into the tier list for units only. So at SS rank, we have Sai once again. I'm not really going to go into detail too much because we've seen him on every single list so far. He's always SS, or in the case of Ninja World Tournament, maybe slightly less. But he's so good because of his chakra generation, and for timed modes like FG and ATB, where you have limited turns to do as much damage as possible, you really need the chakra generation so that your units can all jutsu in time. KCM once again is at the SS tier, and he's here because of his insta-jutsu, his plethora of buffs that he can give on both of his modes, and overall just a really good buffer for every single mode in this game. So that's why we have those two. It shouldn't be a surprise, and I've talked about them in every video so far. Now in the S tier, there might be some surprising characters here, and remember that the S tier is 10s only on the number rating. So that's why we have T-Datara, and he's great because of his crit support, so crit rate, critical damage increase rate. And he has been one of the OG crit buffers ever since Season 2 when he was released. So it's important to have crit buffers like him because in ATB, the meta strategy right now is to use a tribe multiple times within the run that you can damage your opponents with. So if you increase the critical stats of the tribe, you'll be hitting the opponent harder with extra critical damage. Similar situation for Mei. She also is a crit support unit just like Datara is, with the crit rate and critical damage increase rate buffs. So those two kind of serve similar roles on the team. Nagato is very good, similar to FG. A lot of people might not have him, but if you do, you should definitely get him upgraded. He has a great vitality, and that allows him to be placed earlier on your team, as in before energy if you need to. But for characters like Datara and Mei, you would want to put them in energy, or else they wouldn't have enough chakra to jutsu before then. So Nagato, he provides nice debuffs, and he also gives critical damage increase rate and critical rate every time your allies are attacking first. So basically, in pretty much every case, unless you might be a lower level player, your cells will always be faster than your opponent in ATB. There's only one character that you're fighting anyways. So that means you'll be getting constant buffs for 7 turns thanks to Nagato. That's why he's really good. Next up is Shikidai. And in the past, you might remember that Shikamaru was the prime ATB debuffer that you placed first in energy. We're going to talk about Shikamaru soon, but right now Shikidai is definitely edging him out. He's more versatile, and he also provides a lot of important buffs on his jutsu alongside the bind. So obviously the bind reduces damage reduction rate with a chance of shadow bind, and then his bind increases critical rate. He also has extra debuffs starting from turn 1, so he doesn't even need a jutsu for these. He'll lower damage reduction rate and guard rate, which is really good. So 5 out of 7 turns is great. That's most of the battle. That's why we have him here. And obviously the vitality means that you want to put him first in energy. Next up is KLM. So similar to Shikidai's situation, KLM has replaced some of the old ATB units, and he can increase ally tribe gauge. If you remember from before, increasing tribe gauge is essential to the meta strategy for ATB, where you have to use tribes multiple times within 7 turns. And if you don't remember that, I'll be going over that in another video when the time comes. But either way, he'll be replacing characters like Jiraiya, Sakura Blossom, Choji. And the reason that he does do this is he does the important part that they do, increasing ally tribe gauge, but he also increases damage increase rate, critical rate. Then he also debuffs enemies guard rate and guard damage reduction rate. So that's really good for modes like this where you have to just do damage to them, not really worry about defense that much. You can also increase some other stats as well. So overall, he is exactly what we needed for ATB. We needed an allied tribe gauge buffer that also provides other utility for your team offensively, and the other characters that I mentioned before just don't do that as well as he does. That's why if you have him, you really want to put him on your team in place of the other tribe gauge boosters, and just keep in mind the vitality, so he's not going to be able to jutsu in spirit on turn 2. Next up we have EMS, the newest unit. I talked about him a little bit in the past, and he was very good for FG. So for a similar reason, he's very good for ATB. Does pretty good damage, increases damage increase rate, critical damage increase rate, which is really great. And also critical rate, so he just applies some of the best buffs that your units could have. That's why he's great. So now that we've gone through the SS and S tier, we can move on to the A tier. And these are characters that you might want to put either depending on who your opponent is, or if you need a replacement, because I sure don't have all of these SS and S tier characters. Remember that you'll only have 6 slots, so that would be 3 taken up by the tribe, and then even less slots because you have Sai and some essentials like KCM if you have them. But let's move on to Shikamaru. He also has Shadow Bind, which is basically the same as Shikidai, but he also has more damage reduction rate than his son does. That's basically it. The jutsu's much more simpler. He's a simpler character than Shikidai is. He has the 5k, which is good, but you still want to put him first in energy. Then his 4th skill is very simple. It's basically just boost attack for all allied tactical shinobi by 9% permanently. So that's alright, but as I said before, Shikidai is a lot more versatile. Sometimes your team might not have as many T units, so it's not too important to use Shikamaru. And even if your team does have T units, they're not really meant to be the ones doing damage. So that's why Shikidai is just better in that regard. I feel like Shikamaru just doesn't do enough with his 4th skill. That's pretty much it. Now onto Haku. People really don't use Haku that much, but if you're going against the tactical shinobi in ATB, which are quite a few of the Akatsuki members, he can lower defense by 30% permanently, which is great. Can also do some attack buffs for attack shinobi. Then that's basically it. Yeah, you need the LB2 on Haku as well for the damage reduction rate debuff. But he gets outshined by a lot of other characters, so you probably don't want to use him. Now we have Jiraiya. I already talked about the role of the tribe gauge boosters for ATB. So Jiraiya basically does that, and then also has some tactical shinobi buffs. His vitality allows him to be put in spirit if you need to. And then his fourth skill just relies on him being defeated, which is not very useful. So that's why Jiraiya is not the best tribe gauge booster, but he is better than some of the other ones, which I really won't be able to go over in this video. Not too important. Like Sakura Blossom and Choji, they're okay if you need them, but they really don't help your team out in other ways. Sometimes you might need to have 2 tribe gauge boosters though, because of the 80% strat, so that's basically when you only start with 80% tribe gauge. CM2, I've talked about this before, he does a lot of good nuking on his own, but his main use to your ATB team is this buff, which is similar to Nagato's in that every time your active cell is faster than your opponent, you'll be getting these buffs. This is just not as good as Nagato's, so he is kind of like a weaker version of that. And Nagato's jutsu also just does more than his does, so that's why not very useful to use him. Tobi is your tech against D units. A lot of his skills reduce damage reduction rate for defense shinobi, so his jutsu, his second skill, LB2 applies to everyone, but it's still more damage reduction rate decrease than 25% damage reduction rate to enemy defense shinobi. So he's just made to destroy the units, so you want to use him if you're going against one of those, but in other cases you don't want to. His vitality also helps him out if you need to position him somewhere else. A Narukage, people really don't talk about him that much anymore. He's just outshined by other A units who can also apply buffs. So you can give some attack buffs, which is alright. Then he gives some damage increase rate buffs permanently, and also some critical rate with LB2. So he would probably just be a replacement if you're really missing some of the other characters. And he's definitely better when you have more attack shinobi on your team. His vitality doesn't really help his case either. We have his son, T Boruto. It's from the same banner. So his main use is his jutsu here, where he increases damage increase rate by 12% for 3 turns with 1 jutsu. Then he also increases damage increase rate for tactical shinobi. And yeah, he has a lot of defense, which isn't helpful here. Vitality's not very great either. You probably don't want to use him. So far out of these, I'd say like Shikamaru is probably the 9. Then most of the others have been 8s. Okay, next up, Travel Outfit Gaara. So his jutsu boosts attack, and you need his LB2 if you want to use him for this, because you're not going to be going last. And even if you were, this doesn't really help. His LB2 basically gives damage increase rate by 12% to allies who are attacking first. So this is exactly the same idea as Nagato CM2, where if your active cell is faster than your opponent, then you'll get these buffs applied every time. So that's why he's pretty good, actually. I've seen people use him in FG also, kind of depends. Keep in mind the vitality as well if you want him to jutsu. So you want to put him in energy. Kid Kakashi, his fourth skill will just jump right to it. It's basically the same idea as Nagato. He'll boost damage increase rate and critical rate for cells that are faster than the opponents. So that's pretty good, actually. People used to use him a lot. All of this doesn't matter for his LB2. Jutsu will lower damage reduction rate for defense shinobi permanently, so he'll probably be better against those. But otherwise, he's just a worse version of Nagato, but he is better than some of the other characters who also provide those like turn-by-turn buffs. We have T Kisame. So he can lower enemies' damage reduction rate by 18%, which is pretty good. Boost damage increase rate and critical rate by 14% for 3 turns, which is also pretty good. Vitality means that he would need to be put in energy as well. Besides that, his 4th skill doesn't help at all, so that's why he's not as good. And you probably wouldn't want to use him unless he is a replacement, because his 4th skill relies on you defeating an enemy. And in ATB, you're going against this boss with like a ton of HP, so it's probably not happening. And if you defeat him, then you're going on to the next target. So it's not like this would ever be activated. Now we have Childhood Sasuke. So he can boost allies' attack by 14% for 3 turns. Then he increases active allies' damage increase rate by 15%, and that's whenever he rotates in. So his buffs are not very good compared to a lot of other units here. He nukes well, but that's not too important because your main damage source is the tribe, so that's why he won't be very useful. And his vitality doesn't help, and his 4th skill where he gives chakra isn't very useful as well because you have Sai anyways. So there really won't be a case where you have to like jutsu earlier using this. Maybe in PvP there are options where he can help some units jutsu faster because of his 4th skill chakra gen along with size, but for these PvE modes you really don't need to. Now we have Kushina. People might be surprised to see her. I'm kind of surprised to see her here actually. She hasn't been of any use in any of the other modes really. But let's see what she does. So she lowers all enemies' damage reduction rate by 12%. Okay, and then boosts damage increase rate for all attack shinobi. Then boosts critical rate for all tactical shinobi. So that's pretty decent, I guess, because your ATB team is pretty much all going to be attack and tactical shinobi. You don't really need defense shinobi. So she does boost those, but she just doesn't apply enough offensive buffs compared to the other characters. So probably low A. Now we have Tobirama. So just like how Tobi was a counter for D units, Tobirama is the prime counter for T unit targets. Haku is alright, but I think Tobirama's better because he has a jutsu that boosts critical rate by 20% and critical damage rate by 20%, which is great. So let's say you put him in energy, which you should because of this vitality. Once he jutsus on turn 3, turn 4 will be your turn to use your tribe, so they'll be able to benefit from these buffs. Then most of his other skills will just boost active allies attack by a bit, then lowers damage reduction rate by 10% permanently for tactical shinobi. So yeah, he would just be a good debuffer for tactical shinobi. He also has good buffs as well for your team. Let me check Haku again. So Haku lowers defense 10% damage reduction rate. So maybe Haku isn't so bad against tactical shinobi either. But yeah, that's basically where these two have their most potential in ATB. So that's basically it. We've gone through the first 3 tiers. The other tiers really don't need to be covered very much. The only ones I talk about from B tier are Choji and Blossom, but I've already done that. There'll be a video about how to set up your teams depending on either the target or the amount of tribe gauge you're starting with. Also, I guess Hashirama fits the role too, so he's the only other one I would highlight from this group. The nuking isn't very important in this mode because you have the tribes. So yeah, he also boosts tribe gauge, so he serves a similar role. That's basically it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and this series. We've got a lot of cool things coming up soon, so hope you stay tuned. Thanks for watching.